Welcome to Follow Your Joy podcast, where intuition is the doorway to your wisdom, your genius, and your joy. I'm your host, Marla Diane, and I've been transforming creative entrepreneurs' lives for over 26 years. Through 2 businesses as a success coach and a business strategist, and prior to that, an entertainment publicist and a talent manager for 2 decades. It's time to make joy your inner GPS for life and business decisions rather than lean on your logic and reason first. You'll not only be following what is most authentic to you and for you, but you will live the beautiful life that's meant just for you. You'll come to learn that following your joy is a life and a business strategy. Listen in for inspiring entrepreneurial stories and solocasts that illuminate how by trusting your intuition, you'll create a fulfilling result. Want to learn how to access, trust, or up-level your intuition? Join me in the conversation to find out how. Well, hello, my friends. It is good to be here on another episode of Follow Your Joy. But before I introduce my lovely guest, who I know you'll find fascinating by her story and how she changed her life, I want to share with you about a breakdown to breakthrough experience in my own life that you may resonate with. So I remember when my mentor, one of many, asked me for the first time, how good will you allow your life to get? And I literally kind of took a deep breath and took in her question. And the word allow really hit a chord with me because I wasn't allowing the volume of good to come to me. Instead, I was in struggle mode. I was in push mode. I was in hustle mode, almost to the point of spinning out. And that rarely, as you know, produces the desire you want, and it leaves you burned out. And that was 2017. I took a leap of faith and took her direction to change my thoughts, patterns, beliefs, and my life. She and I created my lifelong dream to work and live in Italy for a month. You know, that laptop lifestyle. So we planned my month-long stay in beautiful, beautiful Florence, Italy. This was June 1st, 2017. And by July 30th, I was on the plane to Rome, Italy. And then the train up to Florence. It was absolutely my eat, pray, love transformational experience on all levels, including financial. I let go of the angst and the stress and the disconnection from my creativity. Boy, was I disconnected. Wow. And I turned my business and my life around. And it was really more for me about how I was running me and my business. It wasn't the coaching, which I loved. It was how I was operating from the head up instead of body, mind, soul. And as well, just the disconnection, right, from myself, my creativity, all of that, right? So the core of my breakdown was not being in receiving mode, which is feminine, and this is no gender here, everybody. Masculine, feminine is what I use as principles of life when I coach, especially for my women, because masculine means, you know, structure and logic and practicality and predictability and strategies and linear and logical and all those things. That's we have to have that in life. But we also must have the feminine of life, which is the flow, the creativity, the intuition, the circular, the emotion, did I say intuition? Yeah. The connection, the collaboration, right? Creativity, all of that is feminine of life. And both men and women have this. So it has nothing to do with, again, gender. Okay. So I was in masculine mode way too much, way too much. And I needed a balance. And that's what receiving is, where masculine is the giving, believe it or not. Giving is masculine. Receiving is feminine, right? Because you are allowing to come to you rather than thinking you have to constantly be in action giving mode. Okay. So that was really the core of my breakdown. And then my breakthrough, was getting out of this hustle mode and so forth. And you can find a lot more details of this on my website at my About page. I tell that part of that story. But since then, all that to say is since then, every time I catch myself not allowing, in fact, it just happened this week, right? Not allowing or not being in receiving mode with inspired action, which, by the way, has to do with, we call it leveraging the action with universal energy, the intangible, by focusing on what? The feeling, right? The feeling of your desire that hasn't manifested yet. And I listen to a lot of Esther Hicks. I love the videos that are on YouTube. And I can't get enough of it. I'll listen to almost, every day. I've got her book, Ask and You Shall Receive. Is that what it is? Yeah. Ask and it'll be given. And the point is when we focus on, she says, get hooked on the feeling, because that's universal language. And it will always feed back to you in your life, everything you're feeling and more of that. Right? So she says, focus on the feeling of the manifestation, not the manifestation. I thought, man, that's amazing stuff, right? It's so true. So yes, is that when you leverage, back to that, when you leverage both action, inspired action, which is intuitive, listening to your intuition first, not your head, along with then, right, universal, right, partnership in the feeling of that which you want to manifest. Now you have leverage, something that will happen quicker and sooner. Versus only leaning on what? Action. All right. Love that stuff. So I literally will shift. I'll catch myself like I did this week, catch myself, slow down, take a deep breath, maybe even go outside, go do something to break the pattern I'm in. Right. And, look, I know I'm not alone in this. I know every one of you that are listening, you've experienced this. I know that. So I am aspiring for you to slow down, catch yourself when you're in that hurry, hustle, gotta get it done mode. Now, are there times we need to be really focused like that? Of course, but not to the point where you're breathing shallow up in your upper chest. And that's one of the ways you can tell is if you focus for a moment on where you're breathing in that moment, I guarantee you are not breathing from your stomach. You're breathing way up here, right? Okay. So this scenario, all that then to say is this scenario can be applied to your financial life, allowing money to flow in rather than work hard, hustle mentality to earn it. I want you to be attracting, right, the manifesting in addition to taking whatever action needs to happen. Because when we're in that work hard, hustle mode mentality, it's a belief, it's a pattern that you may not be conscious to. All right. So I aspire for you to, take stock, notice, observe what patterns are you in when things are not showing up, or they may be coming, let's say it's money, it's coming in trickles, it's not coming in a big flow, right? Been there, done that many times in 15 years. Mm-hmm. So I aspire you to take the next level of owning your earning power by allowing it to happen. So I have a special video for you. It's in the show notes, a link, about transforming your money relationship. As y'all know, if you are familiar with me, that's one of my core teachings is transforming your relationship with money. But I have the video for you, and it'll explain the next level and how I made a new workbook with you in mind for the masses. Because it's for the first time I'm making my breakthrough discovery based questions available, usually only accessible to clients, right? So it's not a very long workbook, right? But definitely profound enough to get you to stop and notice something about you and your relationship with money and your money story that you may not have been conscious to. So after watching the video, then you go to marladiane.com/transform. And again, that link too will be in the show notes. That will take you to the page. The workbook, it's $97. It's nothing for potentially a lifetime of change. So do yourself a favor, and doesn't matter what level you're at in your income, in your earnings, you can be a multimillionaire. Everybody's got money stuff, right? That can be transformed. Okay, so take a look at that. Wonderful. So let's segue into how delighted I am to bring on my guest. That's Brooke Ansley.
Yep.
Hey, very good. So Brooke is and I think this is important to know, a 700-hour certified hypnotherapist, a 200-hour registered yoga instructor, and creator of Happy Body Blueprint, a community that teaches women how to reclaim control over their health and habits with self-hypnosis. How cool is that? She will share with you her own health crisis, right, story that led her to hypnosis and yoga, which was far from where she was. And there's that gift in the challenge, everybody. That's what I call it, is that when we have our own life crisis, it's meant to be a gift, but boy, I'll tell you, it's sure hard to see that when you're in the middle of it, right?
Yep.
What kind of gift is that, right? So Brooke combines a passion for the mind-body connection with a degree in psychology and unique skill set as a former applied behavioral analysis therapist. Boy, say that 10 times.
I know. It's the official name, but
That sounds so important. Her fascinating story includes being crowned Miss Maryland 2009, a contestant in the 2010 Miss America competition and Division III collegiate athlete. Woo, like I said, you'll love her story. And, her passion really is about helping women reconnect with their bodies, create sustainable health by integrating neuroscience, behavioral science, mindfulness, and yogic principles. So it's all about, the positive change mentally, emotionally, physically. So here we are. Welcome, Brooke.
thank you, Marla. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I love this topic. I mean, anything that has to do with, body, mind, soul, and any sort of, holistic therapies, and modalities to help us, especially at this day and time. Everybody needs to have some, if not several, in their toolbox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also interesting because like a lot of, when you think about health and wellness, everyone thinks about the physical. Like, what am I eating and how much am I working out? But really it comes down to what's happening in your life holistically, what's missing in your life emotionally, mentally. And I really come at health from a mental health and an emotional health standpoint. And I bring all of that together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love
And
that.
from like an intuitive, I love everything you were talking about with really connecting into your intuition, because health also is intuitive. And we've just been taught as women to disconnect from our bodies.
Yep.
Completely disconnect.
Yep. That's right. And lean on out there, which has everything to do again with the whole premise to my podcast, which is the intuition, everybody. Intuition is a amazing, amazing tool that we have that society does not encourage and teach as much as it should. It's always about the logic, right?
Yep.
My story I just shared.
Yep.
Look, if you're a woman, and I know you agree with this, I think we even talked about this in our, one of our other Zoom calls, is that, and I've experienced this myself, is that when women, and this is specific to women, guys, you have a different tolerance level and you're wired differently. Okay. And that is when women operate too long of a time in their masculine, and I'm talking the logic, the linear, the brain, right? You're in the mindset, we're operating from the neck up. We literally, our heart and our intuition shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another word for that, disconnected.
Yeah.
We get disconnected. And so that's what I'm saying is our society, yes, look, having masculine, feminine balance, and that's what I teach, right? The masterful blend of it. We must have both, but the too much for women on that masculine side, again, mind, I know we go into burnout.
Yep. And that's exactly what happened to me when I was 31 years old. I was an events director. I was very much operating from that masculine energy place.
Yep.
I was people pleasing. I wasn't setting boundaries. I was just burning the candle at both ends. But what's interesting about that is I had been doing that my whole life. Like I think back and this term I kind of joke about now, but I had busy woman syndrome. And I think culturally as women, I know that I had a belief system about if I'm busy, I must be important. I must be good at my job. I must be doing something right if I'm busy, right? Mm-hmm. I'm too busy for this. I've got so much going on. Go, 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 go. And I did not know how to turn that off. I was living in fight or flight, right, essentially.
Yeah.
And my nervous system was living in fight or flight. You wouldn't have known it if you looked at me. I was going to my hot yoga sculpt classes. I was working out. I was in pretty good physical shape. And then one day I went to my primary care physician, just a general checkup, and my blood pressure was through the roof. I was 31 years old. And the diastolic number, I think it was I was 140, which isn't that high, but over 92 or something crazy. Like the diastolic number is really high. And that was a wake-up call. And my doctor, they want to immediately put you on medication, which I eventually did do, which made me feel even worse in my body, kind of disconnected me even more, right? Because I started feeling tired and I didn't have energy to do the workouts I used to do before. It just made my body feel bad. And so I decided to start looking into meditation, hypnosis. I'd been doing yoga for a little while, so I had tapped in a little bit. That 2 minutes at the end of a yoga class, I started to feel that calm for the first time in my life, just in those 2 minutes. But the idea of actually slowing down thoughts longer than 2 minutes sounded foreign to me. My nervous system wasn't used to it. And that's actually when I first went to a hypnotherapist. I had a friend of a friend who said, hey, try this. And I tapped into what I call the space between the thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I spent my entire life at the effect of my critical mind, thinking just because I have a thought means it's true. Right? This was a major concept for me, Marla. I'll never forget the moment I realized that just because I have a thought actually doesn't mean it's true. I don't have to listen to all of them. And when I started becoming aware of them, which happened naturally when I started practicing hypnosis, which kind of tapped me into meditation, I just became way more aware of my thought processes. I realized how negatively I was speaking to myself, all those belief systems, that critical mind, which when you're talking about masculine, feminine energy, that critical mind, that voice, that part of the brain that kind of reminds you who you are and where you've been, it's programmed based on your belief systems. Yep. That's that masculine side. And we need it to survive, right? We need it. We need the programs that we have to take all of the information that we're perceiving in our lives and put it into patterns so that we understand our experience. But if we only live by that, we'll be living essentially on autopilot, based on these belief systems that have been pretty much in place since we were kids.
Yep.
And slowing down that critical mind not only helped me get off blood pressure medication and improve my health, but it helped me tap into my actual intuition. It's that voice that's underneath the noise.
I love that. Underneath the noise. I like that saying.
Yeah. It's like you got to get below the noise.
Yeah.
And it's funny how when things get a little busy and crazy, we forget that it's even there, or it's almost like, is it still there? But yes, when you slow down, that voice is still there below the noise.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when we talk about wellness and health, but what I made changes then in my career, in my relationships, the way I was approaching relationships. All of a sudden, I could see everywhere in my life that was dysfunctional. And I became hyper aware of where I was in that masculine energy, really like listening to the critical mind. And I tuned in and I made changes from a more intuitive place. Like, what does my heart say about this? And then I created a holistic happiness in my life that then impacted my health. So career and relationship, all these relationships that we have impact our health and wellness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was funny. I was in the nonprofit world for probably over 10 years, I think. And when I decided to move into, I guess, the healing arts, you could call them, which just feels so much more feminine. And I love this work is just so much more in alignment with me. Although I do laugh because Marla, you said it before we got on here, you said, "Oh, you're so efficient." And I thought, that's my masculine side. It just has to come through sometimes.
No, but that's okay.
No,
like I said, is you
Yeah.
must have, that's the point, is you must have a blend of both.
Yes. But it's funny, I find that side of me, which I call my cruise ship director. She's great.
That's cute.
But sometimes she needs to relax a little bit, right? And it's that balance. And I love being in the healing arts because it allows me to be more in like the feminine side. And that's so much more in alignment with who I am. And and I remember I actually left that position. It was an amazing nonprofit that I worked for. It was called Tower Cancer Research Foundation, but I had to make that choice for myself. And it was scary because I took a leap of faith. I didn't have anything lined up other than I had just become certified in yoga at the time. And I knew that I had to change my life. And that was a very intuitive decision that I made. And it took me down a different path. And of course, the path is never linear or straight. It went a couple different directions before I landed here. But it was a moment, a pivotal time for me. It was almost like there was a version of me that was before that choice and a version of me that's after.
Oh yeah. The transformation. I mean, and I relate with that. I talk about who I was pre-Florence and after Florence. I mean, it just, everything changes it's like the molecules change. So tell us, this is a good place to ask you then, what brings you the most joy in the work that you do?
I love the moment that a client of mine recognizes exactly what I recognize, the relief in realizing that the critical mind, it's always going to exist, but you don't have to be at the effect of it.
That's right.
And you can learn to slow it down, and you can look at it, and you can kind of turn the volume down a little bit. You can become more aware of it. You can develop a relationship to it. So we're not avoiding it, but we are taking the reins and saying, I'm in charge now.
Correct.
And becoming more aware of it. And it's a feeling of relief. And it's funny. I end up, I work with a lot of women who are looking to get fit or lose weight, but really we end up talking about deeper issues and a lot of women who are experiencing anxiety today. So many of us, especially after going through 2020, COVID, the lockdown, and not having access to gyms and yoga studios, and our healthy coping mechanisms were essentially like we didn't have access to some of the things that we had for a long time. And then we were getting bombarded with so much information and news and social media. I believe that created a new level of fight or flight in a lot of us today. I know I experienced it. And a lot of clients that I see today, at the core of their health, their fitness, their weight loss journey is really an underlying feeling stuck in fight or flight mode and feeling like they can't slow down. Their body has forgotten how to be calm, how to actually get below the noise.
Right. Yeah.
And we have to retrain the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting what you were saying earlier about with like manifesting this life of getting in line with the alignment with the emotion, like Esther Hicks says as well. I love that. And it's interesting because when we want to make change and we want to up level our lives, our nervous system's been operating in homeostasis for so long that if we get that change, but we're not practicing it emotionally, our nervous system's not ready for it.
Yeah.
And so that's why emotionally getting in alignment right now is so powerful, because you're training the brain and the body how to feel that success before it's actually happened. And then your experience catches up and it changes your behavior. You start taking action in places that maybe you wouldn't have taken action before because you're practicing it emotionally.
Yeah, that's a really important point that you made about the training your body,
yeah,
to get out of that fight or flight, so that you can move into the emotion, the feeling. Because these are things too that when I'm coaching clients or doing speaking engagements around this very thing, around how our brain works, right? Our brain, and I'm probably repeating a little bit of what you said, which is, our brain is wired. It's wired to not like change, likes predictability, fight or flight, the past. In other words, like you said, is we have to take control. And this is the importance of mindset, everybody. All the mindset principles that you hear out there, all the books, all the podcasts, it's really very, very true, is that you can't allow the brain to go unattended. You cannot. And this is where, when you become proactive and have these tools, from what Brooke is sharing today to any sort of mindset, yoga, hypnotherapy, Reiki, acupuncture, I mean, all of those healing arts to help you integrate the body, mind, soul, so you're not stuck in your head and you're not stuck in that fight or flight pattern. Right?
Yeah.
So it's so vital to take control of your brain and what you're feeding it. And it needs to be future focused, as if you're already there.
Right. Because it wants to, and it's going to lean towards the negative if you leave it unattended, because it's trying to protect you, right? It's scanning the environment for threat. And so when we're aware of that, we have to practice it. It's a muscle.
Yes.
It's like building a muscle. You have to run a new neural pathway, deepen that groove. One of the practices actually, and I know you talk about the sacred morning practice. I remember this gratitude just changing my life. A gratitude journal. That was like one of the first things that I did before I was meditating, before I was doing hypnotherapy. I started a gratitude journal, and it took 60 seconds out of my morning, but it was unbelievable what that did for my well-being and my mindset for the day. It was like it carved out space and it retrained my brain. And now I know they've done a lot of research on this. I was actually just listening to Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's a professor and neuroscientist at Stanford. And he talks about how the gratitude practice literally tells your brain to release serotonin and run dopamine pathways so that you feel more like open to possibility and open to change. And this idea that you can actually make change, it actually impacts your behavior, your motivation. These practices, and the biggest message I like to share is that your behavior is directly related to your mindset and what you're practicing mentally, because your mind is running that show. Your brain immediately impacts your body.
Everything. It impacts your body and it impacts how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so
whether or not you take action or not.
Yeah. I mean, in one instant, providing you have the mindset tools, you can shift from fear, worry, doubt, all of that in a second, because you're taking control. Again, I love this discussion. It's allowing your brain not to go unattended. It literally needs to be trained, everybody. It cannot not be controlled by you. You must do that. And if you don't, you'll definitely look. I've been there many times when I'm unconscious that I'm in a negative place. Like, how long was I there? Right. I'm like, how long was I thinking that?
Yeah.
Right.
When you start to peel back the layers and you realize how it's unconscious for a reason, and it's a process to realize all of the ways we unconsciously sabotage ourselves, because those patterns, they start when we're very little. One of the things that I teach clients, it's called the theory of mind. And it's this idea that we don't really develop a critical mind until around the age of 8. That's when kids start, questioning, Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy, right? Around that age, because they develop the critical mind at that time.
Okay.
Prior to that time, we don't have that area of the mind to discern or decide what we actually want to believe. And so we have experiences and we develop associations and we develop our sense of identity, who we are, what we believe we are capable of, how much money we're able to make based on the patterns that what we're seeing in our lives, our family systems, culturally at school. We create those belief systems at that age. And then around the age 8, we have that critical mind, and that solidifies. The critical mind becomes kind of like a filter by which we see the world and we experience the world and our behavior. And so sometimes I joke, it's like, if we're not looking at what our unconscious habits and beliefs are, there's an 8-year-old running the show.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. We just have to become hyper aware of what it is that what is the filter by which we're viewing the world. And is this belief serving me? Is it helpful?
Right.
I know, like Byron Katie talks about, like, is it true? But another way of thinking about, because sometimes it's hard when you're like, but that belief is true. Like, I don't know. Think of a belief here. Like, okay, well, let's talk about sugar, right? A lot of people are like, well, sugar gives me satisfaction. I know sugar gives me satisfaction. Is it true? It might be true, but is it helpful?
Right. To what degree, it may be true, but what degree is it, supporting you?
Right. Or when it comes to career, what you're capable of or your value, you have to really look at, are these beliefs helpful to you?
Yeah.
And you have to shift those. And we use, in hypnotherapy, we use imagery. The brain learns in images. It fires neural pathways. It creates new neural pathways. It learns, it creates these new neural pathways through imagery. The brain doesn't really know the difference between an actual experience and a memory, or a visualization.
Yep, that's right.
So what's cool about it is, like, when you get into the state of hypnosis, you get into a very relaxed state. The critical mind becomes less active. So the critical mind's kind of like that gatekeeper with all of the pre-programming. And we take her and we sort of like, we put her down for a nap. Which I use that jokingly. It doesn't mean you go unconscious. You're just in a very relaxed focused state, like a flow state, but that part of the mind is less active.
Nice.
And so that gives us access to subconscious. And then we use imagery for a new outcome, right? Like with Italy, it's like, how does Italy smell, taste, touch, feel? What are you going to be wearing when you're in Italy? What are you doing when you're in Italy? Right? Like you really bring up that experience and you teach the brain to feel all of those things through imagery when the critical mind is relaxed. And so it creates a new known in the subconscious for that's actually available to me.
That's that right there. What you've just explained, I mean, is so important, especially today, given what we've all been through. Is that, and I have had clients when we're in this discussion around almost all the points we've talked thus far today, is that some of them actually even have trouble. They've said to me, it's hard for me to imagine, to put something in my brain. And you just explained why. And my immediate response to her when she was saying this only a couple of weeks ago, I said, let's help train your brain to think in images. I said, go create a vision board of some sort. It doesn't have to be any special thing, but get visuals of what it is. It's the old vision board, right?
Yeah. So you see it, you can start to see it.
So you can start to see it. I said, help your brain think in images, because you have that ability. It's shut down for the moment. And so that's interesting how you point that out, that it quiets the mind, that critical mind, so that you can lean on the creativity, the imaging, because that's exactly how, Olympians get the gold medal. They see it before, right?
Yeah.
Obviously it's their talent, but you know what I'm getting at is that
the visualization through it is what a lot of top performing athletes use. Yeah.
All of those. That's the importance of it, is this imagery and how to do that.
And what I'll say too, because there might be some listeners thinking like, well, I'm not very visual, right? And that's okay. I actually did not consider myself to be much of a visual person either. I'm very kinesthetic and auditory. Like I can feel it and I hear it as a former musician. I hear, right? So I'm very auditory and kinesthetic. And what I've found, I've become a lot more visual now because of the work that I do. So it is an area of the brain you can work. But also what I used to do when I couldn't see it, I would just feel it. What does it feel like? What does it smell like? I don't have to see it visually, but I can get a sense of it. Use the sensory input. And then with that practice eventually, and like you said, with a vision board, you start seeing what does it actually look like. But more powerful than the visual is the actual sense of it. Right. And so that kind of helps the brain develop that part of the brain. And even if we're not the most visual learners, your brain is still, without us realizing it, firing those visualizations without us even knowing it's happening. Right. It's happening so quick.
Feeling
which is
part.
why it comes back to emotion.
I was going to say the feeling, if you go back again to the, the Esther Hicks universal law, principles, which is, again, the invisible universal energy. We live, everybody, in an energetic soup. Everything's made of energy, right? And energy communicates through vibration. And our vibration channel to communicate with that invisible energy is our emotions, our feelings. And if we want to create more good in our life, then you need to be essentially feeling, how would it feel? In other words, think of whatever it is that you desire, whatever it is you want to manifest. What's the feeling around that? Focus on that feeling. And you'll start seeing in your life, and obviously we can't guarantee the turnaround time, but be devoted to this, so that you start receiving. It's basically, it's a mirror. It's whatever you put out and feeling, right? The fear, worry, doubt. Well, you're going to get a lot more situations that cause the fear, worry, doubt in you. Right? Versus right? The trust, faith, gratitude, the excitement, the, you're whatever, fill in the blank, whatever it feels like to have that money in the bank, or
Yeah.
feel what it's like to have that relationship or that career that you desire.
Yeah. And I understand that. I think it's hard sometimes when you don't know what it feels like because it's so new. And
Yeah.
that's part of, we're
Mhm.
working with knowns and unknowns. You're trying to create a new known for a new outcome. And so
Mhm.
when you get into that relaxed, calm alpha theta brainwave state, the critical mind is not as active. That lets you be more intuitive and creative with
Ah,
feeling the emotion,
nice.
which, and I will caveat here,
Very nice.
meditation is alpha theta brainwave state. So if you meditate regularly, you're getting into that state. You're getting into that intuitive state, and you can allow that creativity to kind of help you feel that outcome. But that's why hypnosis kind of guides you into meditation a little quicker, a little easier. But I'm going to tell a quick story, Marla. Actually, what you were saying just made me
Yeah.
think of this.
Yeah.
I moved to California 11 years ago. I'm from the East Coast.
Mm.
And when I was 26, when I decided to move to California, there was a series of events. But when I was 26 years old, I was in a very different frame of mind. Never meditated a day in my life. I had never taken a yoga class. I was, just still living by that critical mind. But I read, I read a book and I made a vision board. And on the vision board was an address in Manhattan Beach, California. And I ended up moving to California, and I ended up living in West Hollywood because the rent is about half the rent in West Hollywood when I moved out here was about half of what it is in Manhattan Beach. I landed there. I ended up living there for 8 years. I got my job. I found yoga, all these things. And in 2019, I almost moved back home. And I knew I needed to make a change. Something intuitively told me I
Uh-huh.
need to shift. I need to change, but I don't know if I should be going back to family. I'm not sure if I should be trying to find something else here in California. So I decided to let the universe tell me what direction to move in. And I put in my 30 days notice in my apartment. And with the very week that I was moving out of my apartment, I got this job offer for a position in South Bay.
Oh, interesting.
And I had already booked flights to go home, and I was putting my stuff in storage. So I said, I'm heading home for the holidays. Can I start in January? And they said, sure. And I thought, all signs are pointing towards this job. And so I went home for 2 months. I spent Christmas with my family. I moved into my apartment in Hermosa Beach. I
Mm.
started that job.
Mm.
Very shortly after, everything shut down for COVID. And I knew the job was wonderful, but it was back in an office and it was a cubicle situation, right? Our direction, it's never linear, right? I
Mm.
almost went back. And I just felt like in my gut, I don't know if this is right for me. And then everything shut down. And a few weeks later, it was a brand new nonprofit they were trying to launch. And unfortunately, they weren't able to launch anymore because of everything shutting down.
Yeah.
And that's what sent me back to school for hypnotherapy, because I thought,
Mm.
now's the time to do what I really want to do. I have no other choice. There's nothing else to do. I'm stuck at home. So I did that. And at the time, I also met who's now my husband, and I moved in with him in Manhattan Beach.
I love
And
that.
after I moved in with him, I remembered I have a vision board somewhere in a box that has an address in Manhattan Beach that I made 11 years ago.
Oh,
And I almost moved home, but fate would send me here to South Bay. And
yes.
it wasn't, I'd completely forgotten about it, but I was always coming here. And yes, that's a long time to wait, but at the time, I had so much growth to do, right?
The power of listening to your intuition. I mean, I absolutely love your story because you just kept, I call it following the yellow brick road. You
Yes.
just kept
I'll just
like,
go through
oh,
this open door.
yeah, it's like, okay, intuition. All right, let me do that. And look what happened. You end up with a new career, a husband, and a new romance. I mean, everything was obviously meant to be there.
Yeah.
And as
And
long as
it's,
you listen to that
yeah.
intuition,
And
love
it's
that.
so funny because you could look at that position that I took in that office as a wrong choice, but it
Yeah.
brought me to South Bay. It
Yeah.
was not wrong. It was perfect.
Yeah. It was perfect.
So there
Really,
we are.
that is a really, really good story. Okay. So, and we could probably talk for another hour because
Yep.
I love this, I love this topic. But so based on is kind of one of the last questions, and then let's tell everybody where they get in touch with you, is based on your experience, what key advice can you give to the creatives that are listening? Right?
Yeah. So we've already pretty much touched on this, but when you get into that busy mode and it feels like you have so much to do, and that's that critical mind, right? We can't be creative in critical mind. So it's counterintuitive, but the best possible thing you can do when you feel like you don't know where to start is to stop everything and slow down and get into a meditation or a hypnosis and tune in with that voice and then take inspired action.
Right from my plate, right from my coaching stuff. I love it. And we didn't even practice this ahead of time.
Yeah.
In other words, we are so in alignment is
Yeah.
my point. Yeah, that's really lovely.
And it's hard in the moment sometimes when you feel like you got to check things off the list. And I notice I can feel myself sometimes getting into that doer's mode. And then I remind myself, probably a 5-minute breath work meditation is more productive than 4 hours of busy work today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, terrific. Thank you. Yeah. Really, really good advice. Yeah, drift below the critical mind and tune into the wise inner guide that's below the surface. Quote, Brooke. I like that. Okay. All right, my dear. So let the listeners know, where can they get in touch with you? Or do you have anything you want to offer?
Yes, I offer a consultation call. So if you're interested in learning how hypnotherapy might help you with your health, with happiness, emotional wellness, breaking through subconscious blocks, you can drop me an email at hello@brookeansleywellness.com, or I am very active on Instagram, at Brooke Ansley Wellness. So you can just pop on there, send me a message. Or if you want to take a smaller step, I have a free training at happybodyblueprint.com. So Happy Body Blueprint, there's a free training. You can check it out. All about how to use hypnosis to build a body that you love using the power of the mind.
And everybody, she does these hypnotherapy sessions on Zoom. So you can be anywhere in the world.
Yep.
You don't have to physically be with Brooke. So take her up on this. Go take a look at what she has. And yeah, at your fingertips, you've got Brooke. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, for being here. And gosh, again, this is a great example, everyone, with excuse me, what Brooke has been sharing. It's following your intuition. Get out of that critical mind, quiet it, right? It's below that surface. That's the intuition of life. That's following your joy. Right? Following your joy, again, is a life and a business strategy, because it's part of the intuition, but it's when you follow that feelings of joy, you're on the right track. It's not just a fleeting good feeling. It is literally an indication you're in the right space. If you're not following your joy, what are you following? Right? What are you following? So, okay, everyone, thank you so much for being here. And all the resources that Brooke had mentioned, and myself, it's down in the show notes. And please pay attention, slow down, listen to your intuition, and of course, always follow your joy. All right, take care, everyone. See you next episode. Thanks for listening in. You can find more entrepreneurial stories and resources at marladiane.com. And while you're there, enjoy my 3 free downloads to up-level your business and your life. How about you take a screenshot of this episode and tag me on Instagram by sharing your highlights of what you learned today? I'd love to connect there with you. Until next episode, take care.